Welcome to Lotus Tale Studios. I hope you find comfort in the stories we share. If you enjoy what you hear, please like, comment, and subscribe to keep our channel growing. Ever since I was young, people called me a wicked woman. I hit my parents and tormented my brothers and sisters until everyone knew my name for all the wrong reasons. Now at 28, no man would come near me. That is how I ended up becoming the second wife of a military commander who had lost his first wife. Before I walked through those gates, I promised myself I would make the Chin family bow to me, ensuring they would tremble at the sight of me from that day forward. But the moment I stepped into the Chin home, a tiny girl who looked as soft and fragile as cotton candy pulled gently at my sleeve. She paused before whispering, "Are you my new mother? Do I really have a mother now?" I stood frozen, seeing my own 8-year-old self staring back at me. On the 8th day of the first month, everyone in my household celebrated because the family demon, Ruby Song, was finally getting married. Before I left, my stepmother came to say goodbye one last time, slipping a cheap jade bracelet onto my wrist. "Ruby, you are leaving us today, and as your mother, my heart is truly breaking." She dabbed at her eyes with a cloth. Of course, there were no actual tears. I gave her a small smile and said, "Really? If you are so heartbroken, maybe I should cancel the wedding." Her face went white and her whole body tensed. "Stop talking nonsense. Do not say such things. I need to make sure your room stays locked tight. If the Chin family finds you unsuitable, you might try to come back." My stepmother nearly collapsed in panic and quickly called for the servants. "Oh heavens, hurry, get her into the wedding carriage right now." Just like that, I was rushed into the carriage and taken to the Chen manor. However, when it was time for the ceremony, standing next to me was a large rooster. My husband, David Chen, was stationed at the frontier defending the city and could not return to complete the wedding with me. The Chen family came from a long line of prestige and honor, and David was the general of the Western Territories. Such a fine match would never normally fall to someone like me. The problem was that David had terrible luck with wives. His first wife died when their second daughter was still a baby. David spent most of his time away fighting wars and rarely came home, leaving his 2 daughters with old Lady Chen and his older brother's family. The matter of remarrying had been delayed indefinitely until now, when the 2 girls had grown and needed a mother to guide them properly. So the wedding was hastily arranged. David only came home once a year, so marrying into this family was no different from becoming a widow. No daughter from a respectable family would agree to be his wife. But for me, this was a perfect arrangement. I would not have to deal with a husband bothering me, yet I could control a large fortune. There was no reason to refuse. A few crows from the rooster replaced the groom's vows to finish the ceremony. Under the pitying stares of the guests, I was led into the bridal chamber. Outside, drums and horns played festively. Inside, the matchmaker made the bed and recited blessings, creating quite a lively scene. Right then, 2 little girls walked in carrying a water basin. Without asking, I knew the older one was the eldest daughter, Lily, and the younger was the second daughter, Rose. Both girls were beautiful, no different from precious jewels. Yet they seemed timid and scared, clearly very afraid of me. I was just about to call them over when I heard a sharp voice demanding to know what they were waiting for and ordering them to serve the madam and help her wash her hands. It turned out to be a woman dressed in expensive clothes. Seeing that the 2 children were hesitant to come forward, she secretly pinched Lily hard on the arm. Lily flinched and lowered her head even more. I frowned slightly, guessing this woman was David's sister-in-law, Diana Liu. Before the marriage, I had heard that although the Chin family was small, everyone was gentle and kind. Looking at this scene, it seemed the rumors were complete lies. Too bad I was not a kind person either. From the moment I stepped through the door of the Chin family, these 2 little girls belonged to me in name. If anyone was going to discipline them, it would be me. So why would it be anyone else's turn? "Hello, sister-in-law Diana." I stood up and before Diana could speak, I said, "This is Lily's first time meeting me, so being afraid of a stranger is perfectly normal. She can be taught slowly over time. There is no need for you to pinch her like that." Diana did not expect me to challenge her so quickly upon entering the family, and she looked surprised, but soon recovered her composure, smiling as she said she never pinched the child and I must have been mistaken. Lily, did I pinch you? Diana looked directly at Lily. Lily shook her head in fear, grabbed her younger sister's hand, and quickly stepped towards me. Please wash your hands, madam. The voices of the two children were young but their manner was extremely careful, clearly showing they had been treated too harshly for far too long. I frowned deeply and told them to lift their heads so I could see them properly. The two girls hesitated for a moment before timidly looking up at me. I took the water basin from their small hands, set it aside on the table, and then gently touched their soft cheeks, smiling as I said they were two little beauties who made one's heart melt just by looking at them. Lily blushed deeply and turned her head away to avoid my gaze without answering. Rose looked up shyly and asked softly, "Are you my mother? Do I really have a mother now?" I froze for a moment, suddenly seeing my own timid and shy 8-year-old self when my stepmother first entered our house all those years ago. Lily panicked and yanked hard at the hem of Rose's clothes, urgently whispering for her to call me madam instead. I snapped back to reality, held Lily's hand gently, and pulled both girls into my embrace. Do not be afraid of me. Rose is absolutely right. Since I married into this family, I am your mother now. From this day forward, if anyone dares to bully you, just tell me immediately and I will stand up to protect you. No one will harm you while I am here. Lily was stunned, keeping her eyes down in silence. Diana pursed her lips in a faint smile and said that the children were the precious young ladies of the Chin family, so who would dare to bully them? She mocked me for worrying too much and acting like the mistress of the house as soon as I walked through the door. Her words were clearly sarcastic and meant to put me in my place. I simply regarded those words as a compliment and replied that she was absolutely correct. From the moment I stepped into the Chin family, I became the mother of Lily and Rose. Must loving my children wait until tomorrow to begin? Should I delay showing them affection? This statement was unusual but not wrong, causing the people around to chuckle with amusement. Diana was left speechless, clearly wanting to say more, but with so many people present watching the exchange, it was inconvenient to make a scene, so she had to swallow her anger and frustration. She said there were still guests waiting outside and she had to attend to them properly. After speaking, she forced a stiff smile onto her face and left, clearly nursing her anger. The two girls remained in the room, and seeing Diana finally leave, Rose gently tugged at my clothes and timidly called me mother. My heart melted instantly and I hugged her tight, telling her she was such a good girl. I turned to look at Lily, but she just turned her face away, staring coldly at the floor without saying a single word. Although I knew this could not be forced and would take time, my nature preferred strong and direct measures. I immediately pulled Lily over despite her resistance, hugged her firmly, and said that Lily was also a good girl and I was happy to be her mother. By the afternoon, I had carefully studied and grasped the complete layout of the Chin manor. The Chin family had 3 large courtyards. Besides me and the 2 little girls, the manor also housed old Lady Chen and the eldest brother's family. The eldest brother, Richard Chen, held a minor position in the Ministry of Justice, and he was the one who had represented David to welcome me as the bride this morning during the ceremony. Richard and Diana had a 9-year-old son named Kevin Chen. Boys were extremely rare in the Chen family, so Kevin was treated like an absolute treasure, pampered and spoiled to the point of being completely lawless. Lily and Rose avoided him whenever they saw him coming, and it seemed clear they had been bullied by him more than a few times over the years. After dinner that evening, I sat before the bronze mirror adjusting my hairpin and arranging my appearance, when I suddenly noticed a small head peeking out from behind the door, secretly watching me with curious eyes. It was Rose. I waved my hand gently to call her over. Rose shrank back a little in hesitation, then happily ran in and threw herself into my arms with childish enthusiasm. I asked why she did not call out to me when she arrived, reminding her what she had called me earlier today. Rose blushed deeply and shyly called me mother in a soft voice. I praised her for being such a good girl and asked where her sister was right now. She replied that her sister had gone to sleep already. I then asked why she had run over here to my room. Rose twisted the hem of her shirt nervously and hesitated before asking in a tiny voice if I could sleep with her tonight. Her mother had died when she was still a baby in swaddling clothes. Seeing other children cared for and loved by their mothers while she had none must have made her feel very sad and left out. Now that she finally had a mother, she naturally wanted to be loved and have her mother make up for everything she had lacked all these years. I understood her feelings completely because I had once felt the exact same way. I agreed immediately, stood up from my seat, and took her small hand in mine, saying we would go find her sister so we could all sleep together. Rose was delighted, her eyes shining with pure joy and happiness. The two little girls lived in the room on the left side of the courtyard. When I entered quietly, I saw Lily wearing thin clothes, standing barefoot on the cold ground, while next to her was an old woman with her hands firmly on her hips, scolding her profusely and harshly. I stood at the door and asked coldly what was happening here. Nanny Wang jumped in surprise and quickly bowed with a forced smile plastered on her face. "Oh, second madam, what brings you here?" She explained nervously that Miss Lily had spilled the water in the foot basin while getting into bed, and she was simply disciplining her for being so careless. I looked down at the floor and indeed saw a puddle of water at Lily's bare feet. The child stood right in it, her small body trembling from the cold, her head bowed so low as if she were completely used to being scolded like this regularly. I was extremely angry and stared hard at the old woman. "Oh, so you know she is a young lady of this house. If water is spilled, just order someone to clean it up immediately. Instead of worrying about her health and whether she is cold, you stand here and scold her harshly. What kind of twisted logic is this?" Nanny Wang stammered and said I did not understand how things worked here. She claimed that Miss Lily had always been ungrateful and difficult, but I coldly interrupted her before she could finish, stating firmly that no matter what Lily did wrong, it was absolutely not for a mere servant like her to speak about or criticize. Nanny Wang did not expect me to be so blunt and direct with her. Her face flushed bright red and she cried out indignantly that although she was a servant, she was also the eldest master's nanny from when he was a baby and therefore not of low standing in this household. She argued loudly that since Miss Lily and Miss Rose had no mother to teach them properly, if the servants did not manage and discipline them, they would be completely spoiled rotten and the second master would surely blame everyone when he returned. I laughed coldly and asked loudly if she had completely lost her mind. "The mother of these two young ladies is standing right here in front of you. Yet you dare say they have no mother to teach them, or do you simply look down on me and think I am worthless?" Nanny Wang felt guilty suddenly and stammered that she did not mean it that way at all. Without waiting for her to finish her pathetic explanation, I raised my hand high and slapped her hard straight across the face. I told her firmly that although I was a second wife, I was properly and officially married by the second master in a legitimate ceremony. If she thought I was young and ignorant or someone easily bullied and pushed around, she was completely wrong. This slap was just a warning, and if she dared to be disrespectful to the young ladies ever again, I would personally end her miserable life. Nanny Wang held her burning face in complete shock, burst into loud tears, and ran out of the room wailing. I did not care one bit about her feelings. I simply told Lily calmly to get into bed right away and ordered someone to clean the room immediately and bring fresh warm water to wash her cold feet. Soon after, the old woman led Diana into the room, wailing dramatically as she walked, complaining loudly to the first madam that she no longer wanted to live anymore. She claimed she had been devoted all her life and never made a single mistake, not even once blamed by old Lady Chen herself. Yet the new second madam treated her worse than livestock without any respect. Diana arrived looking at me with clear dissatisfaction in her eyes, but not wanting to confront me directly in front of witnesses. She asked what all the commotion was about and why I was treating a respected elder of the family this way. I calmly wiped my feet with a cloth without even looking up at her, telling her to ask the old woman directly what she had done to Miss Lily before I arrived in the room. Diana froze completely. She must have known perfectly well how these servants treated the children on a daily basis. But since no one had ever intervened or stopped it before, she thought it would just pass by as usual. Now that I was here, everything had changed. She forced a stiff smile and signaled the old woman with her eyes, strongly implying it was just a simple misunderstanding and nothing more. However, the old woman did not take the hint at all and insisted stubbornly there was no misunderstanding whatsoever, claiming loudly that the second master personally entrusted the children to her care, and in her 20 years serving the Chen family loyally, she had never once been slapped by anyone. I sneered openly and said if Nanny Wang was not convinced by my actions, we could easily invite someone with authority to judge and arbitrate this matter fairly. Since she was the eldest master's nanny and so highly respected by him, I suggested inviting Richard himself to the front hall to hear both sides, or else we could go directly to the government office and let the authorities decide who was right. Diana panicked immediately and said to stop this nonsense, claiming quickly that the eldest master was far too busy to bother with petty backyard household matters. Richard was currently entertaining important colleagues in the front hall, and if this matter caused a public scene, people would say his nanny was bullying the new bride on her very first day, causing the entire Chen family to completely lose face in society. Diana decided hastily that today was just an unfortunate misunderstanding between everyone and urged us all to rest early and forget about it. She hurriedly dragged the still protesting old woman out of the room, whispering harsh blame for stupidly provoking me and reminding her sharply that I was widely rumored to beat even my own parents without mercy. When they were finally gone and the room was quiet again, I closed the door firmly and tucked Lily carefully into bed. I told her gently but firmly that if anyone dared to bully them in the future, she should come tell me immediately, and I would absolutely not spare them or let them get away with it. Lily looked at me with complicated emotions swirling in her eyes. After a long while of silence, she pressed her lips together tightly, gave a soft affirmation, and turned to lie on her side facing away from me. She was 3 years older than Rose, and her thoughts ran much deeper, making it extremely hard to guess what she was really thinking inside. Standing there for a moment watching her small form, I suddenly heard Rose softly call me to come sleep. I smiled warmly, climbed onto the bed, squeezed myself carefully between the two children, and hugged them both close to sleep peacefully. When I woke early the next morning, only Rose remained curled in my arms. Lily had crawled to the head of the bed at some point during the night, curling herself into a tight ball and occupying only a small corner to completely avoid touching me. I sighed softly to myself. Perhaps this melon was simply too big to be forced down someone's throat. I had no other choice but to be patient. As long as she did not actively oppose me in the future, it would be enough for now. I gently sat up without disturbing the sleeping children, returned quietly to my own room to wash and dress properly, and then walked with purpose to the main room in the back courtyard. I had caused quite a storm yesterday evening, so naturally I had earned some serious resentment from the family. Before even entering through the door, I could feel the thick displeasure radiating from within the room. Looking up as I entered, I saw Richard and Diana sitting together to one side while old Lady Chen sat prominently in the seat of honor, her aged face completely full of dissatisfaction and anger. She remarked sarcastically that I was quite a capable daughter-in-law indeed, making an old woman sit and wait for me as soon as I entered the family. I looked up with an innocent expression on my face and said calmly, it was only early dawn when I arrived, so I was not late by any measure. I asked politely why the old lady seemed so angry this morning. Hearing my casual words, old Lady Chen became even more furious, scolding harshly that as a junior member of the family, I should wake up very early to properly serve my elders, wash their faces with care, and offer tea respectfully. She complained bitterly that I was clearly lazy, waking at this late hour and then taking half an hour to wash and dress myself, making the elders sit and wait impatiently, which was truly improper behavior for a new bride. As she spoke with rising anger, Richard and Diana leisurely sipped their morning tea, looking exactly as if they were watching an entertaining show unfold before them. No wonder Diana had backed down and yielded to me everywhere yesterday without much fight. It turned out she had carefully calculated all of this in advance, wanting someone else to strike on her behalf while keeping her own hands clean. I laughed coldly deep inside my heart, then quickly changed my expression to a tearful appearance, bowing my head submissively to say I honestly did not know the manor had such strict rules and that it was entirely my fault for not knowing better. I begged the old lady earnestly to please forgive me this one time and not damage her precious health with anger over my ignorance. I admitted my mistake so quickly and completely that old lady Chen was momentarily left speechless, and even Diana looked at me with deep suspicion in her eyes, clearly not trusting this sudden change. She coughed awkwardly and started to mention yesterday's incident, but I quickly interrupted and added that I had unintentionally offended my dear sister-in-law yesterday due to not understanding the household rules properly, and I had regretted it deeply all through the night, promising sincerely never to dare do such a thing again. She stammered that it was good I finally admitted my fault. Since I had bowed my head so completely, old lady Chen could not speak any further without appearing to be a bully picking on the innocent new bride. She had to suppress her anger reluctantly and ordered me with a wave of her hand to go serve them breakfast immediately. Serving them was absolutely ridiculous in my mind. Did they keep an entire house full of servants just for decoration and show? However, I did not argue at all and obediently followed them to the formal dining room. After everyone sat down in their proper places, I quickly brought a bowl of steaming hot porridge to the table with both hands and then suddenly let go without warning. The porridge spilled straight onto old lady Chen, covering her clothes completely. I cried out a dramatic apology, claiming I had accidentally stepped on my own skirt, and then clumsily tried to wipe her with a handkerchief in an awkward manner that only made things worse. Then I hurried to fetch a bowl of hot soup and crash, this time it spilled directly onto Richard and Diana, splashing them both thoroughly. All three stood up simultaneously in shock, their clothes dripping wet. They accused me angrily of doing it on purpose and being deliberately clumsy. I stepped back 2 steps in apparent fear, my eyes turning red and looking absolutely pitiful. I apologized profusely over and over, saying I truly did not mean to do it. At home, my mother always served me every single meal, so I never learned how to do this properly. I am so clumsy and I am so sorry. The 3 of them stared at me in stunned silence, and the atmosphere was absolutely crushing. I was immediately kicked out, and old lady Chen told me sharply to go back to my room and reflect seriously on my terrible behavior. Just reflecting quietly was not nearly enough for me. I was completely determined to serve them until they were thoroughly satisfied with my service or drove themselves mad trying. The next day, at the very crack of dawn, long before the roosters had even begun to crow, I woke up full of energy and purpose. The sky was still completely dark, stars still visible overhead. I called out cheerfully that I had come to serve the old lady, knocking loudly on her door. Old lady Chen was deep in sleep and woke with a terrible start, confused and disoriented. When she realized what was happening, she was furious but could not refuse my service since she herself had demanded it. I helped her dress clumsily, taking far too long, chattering the entire time about how devoted I was to learning proper conduct. Then I went to Richard and Diana's room and knocked loudly, announcing I had come to serve my eldest brother and sister-in-law with equal enthusiasm. The 3 were rudely woken from their deep sleep, extremely groggy and irritable, only to realize in confusion that it was not even close to dawn yet. The sky outside was still pitch black. The servants had not even started cooking breakfast, so they had no choice but to sit around uncomfortably in the cold morning air and wait for daylight to arrive so the household could function. They were full of suppressed anger, but seeing my overly enthusiastic face and my claims of following their own instructions, they could not conveniently get angry at me and had to endure it silently, grinding their teeth. On the 3rd day, I did exactly the same thing again. I woke them even earlier if that was possible, right when the night was at its darkest. This time, I brought them tea that was far too hot to drink, forcing them to wait for it to cool. I asked them endless questions about the proper way to serve, pretending to be the most devoted student. By now, dark circles were beginning to form under their eyes. On the 4th day, they looked absolutely haggard. I knocked on their doors with the same cheerful energy, singing out greetings. Old lady Chen actually threw a pillow at her door in frustration. Richard looked like he wanted to cry. Diana's face was pale and drawn. None of them had slept properly in days. The entire household staff was whispering about the second madam's enthusiastic devotion to serving her elders, some hiding smiles behind their hands. On the 5th day, when I went to knock loudly on old lady Chen's door yet again, she absolutely could not take it anymore. She did not even wait for me to finish knocking. The door flew open and she stood there, her hair disheveled, her face twisted in fury, banging her walking stick on the floor and yelling at me at the top of her lungs, asking if I was completely insane and what I possibly wanted by making such a terrible noise at this ungodly hour every single day. I chuckled inwardly with great satisfaction but still pretended to be completely innocent and confused, replying earnestly that she herself had told me a new bride must wake very early to serve her elders properly and devotedly, so I was just following her wise instructions exactly as she had given them. I added with a bright smile that the early morning air was wonderfully good for her health and well-being, and wasn't it lovely that we could spend this quiet time together before the household awoke? I pulled her up forcefully before she could protest further and began to clumsily help her dress, purposely taking forever, dropping hairpins, tying things wrong so I had to start over. Then I turned with the same determined purpose towards Richard and Diana's room. Before I even reached their door, I could hear Diana crying inside desperately. She complained miserably through her tears that the demon was coming again to torture them and she could not take another day of this. She said she had originally thought I was wild and unruly and would surely mistreat the children terribly, which would force David to give them to her to raise along with all the money and inheritance. That had been the entire plan all along. But she had ended up hitting herself squarely in the foot with a rock. It turned out the Chen family had heard of my fearsome reputation as a wicked woman, but still dared to marry me precisely because of this calculated plan. They thought they could control me and use me as an excuse. They spent David's hard-earned money freely on themselves while mistreating his two innocent daughters, which was truly disgusting beyond words. I decided right then and there that I absolutely had to find a way to get that money back into the right hands. I waited patiently for a while, listening to make sure I had heard everything clearly, then knocked cheerfully on the door, announcing brightly that I had come once again to serve my dear eldest brother and sister-in-law. Diana opened the door looking absolutely defeated, her eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. On the 8th day of the first month, the Chen family held a grand banquet to welcome guests from near and far. This was supposedly to celebrate my marriage into the family, but in reality, it was a lively scene carefully hiding clever calculations and schemes. I woke early to prepare myself properly for the event. During the banquet, Diana chatted happily with the relatives and guests, playing the perfect hostess, but I much preferred to stay in the quiet courtyard with the children making lanterns for the upcoming festival. Rose and I worked together carefully to make a cute rabbit lantern, laughing as we folded the paper. But Lily stood far away from us, not participating at all, only bowing her head to make something completely shapeless that she kept turning over in her hands. I called to her several times to join us, but she pretended not to hear. After lunch, when the guests were resting and chatting among themselves, I suddenly realized Lily was nowhere to be seen. Suspicious and concerned, I quietly left the noisy banquet to search for her throughout the manor. Passing by the ancestral hall, I heard soft sobbing coming from inside the dimly lit space. Walking in quietly on careful feet, I saw Lily bent over in front of the altar, desperately hiding something behind her small back, looking at me in complete panic, her eyes wide with fear. I discovered it was her late mother's memorial tablet, which she must have taken down from its place of honor. Beside her on the floor was a crushed lantern, barely recognizable, that she said through her tears was meant to be the moon so she could look at it when she missed her mother terribly during the festival when everyone else had family. I did not get angry at all, though I understood this was likely a setup. Instead, I knelt down beside her and comforted her gently, saying that missing her mother was perfectly natural and nothing to be ashamed of. I offered sincerely to make her a beautiful new lantern together, one that would truly honor her mother's memory. Just at that very moment, noise and rapid footsteps came from outside the hall. "Oh, sister-in-law, why are you here of all places?" Diana rushed over dramatically, slightly out of breath, followed by a crowd of female relatives. Seeing the memorial tablet in my hand, she immediately cried out loudly for all to hear, "Sister, today is the Lantern Festival. It is only natural for Lily to miss her mother and come here to pay respects to her memory. She has absolutely no intention of opposing you or disrespecting your position. Please be kind and generous and do not blame her anymore for this innocent act of filial devotion." I turned back slowly to look at Diana and a large group of women whispering and watching with great interest from outside the door. Suddenly, I understood everything perfectly. This was an elaborate trap Diana had carefully set for me, probably spending days planning it. To be exact, this was definitely not the first time I had been plotted against in my life. I recalled clearly the time my stepmother falsely accused me in front of our entire extended family of being wild and impossible to tame, of having no respect for elders. What did I do back then? Ah yes, I beat her right there on the spot without hesitation in front of everyone. When my father came running to intervene and protect her, I beat him too without mercy, teaching them both a lesson. Since I already had a wicked reputation that I did nothing to earn initially, I would absolutely not accept being wronged or framed for things I did not do. Just as I was about to explode in fury and live up to every terrible thing they expected of me, Lily suddenly pushed Diana away forcefully with both hands and ran to stand beside me protectively, grabbing onto my sleeve. That is not what happened at all. She is lying. The entire ancestral hall fell completely silent. Even the whispers stopped. Lily bit her lip hard until it turned white, looked up at everyone with tears streaming down her face, and said calmly but firmly, "I broke the lantern myself by accident, and the madam did not blame me one bit or scold me. On the contrary, she even said she would make me a beautiful new one to remember my mother. She has been kind to me." I was stunned, completely speechless, my heart racing. Diana was also struck, completely dumb, her mouth hanging open, her face going pale, then quickly signaling desperately to Lily with her eyes, trying to make her take back her words. "Lily, how can that possibly be? Did that woman threaten you? Did she say she would hurt you if you told the truth? Do not be afraid at all. Your aunt is here to protect you from her. Tell everyone what really happened." Lily replied calmly, her eyes no longer shaking or wavering as they had before. Her voice was soft but steady as steel. Diana did not understand at all why Lily had suddenly changed her mind and betrayed the plan they had discussed. She could only stand there completely unable to speak, her carefully laid trap falling apart. The women outside finally realized it was just a misunderstanding and not the scandal they had been hoping to witness. They breathed deep sighs of relief, apologized to me profusely and repeatedly for doubting me, and then dragged the embarrassed and protesting Diana away, chattering among themselves about how they had almost been fooled. After everyone had left and the hall was empty and quiet again, I turned to look at Lily, wanting desperately to ask so many questions. Why had she initially agreed to harm me and participate in Diana's scheme? Why had she suddenly changed her mind at the crucial moment and chosen to defend me instead? However, in the end, I did not ask anything at all. I wanted to let her speak for herself when she was ready, to come to me on her own terms. After a long while of heavy silence, with only the sound of incense burning, Lily finally looked up at me, her eyes still red and swollen from crying, and whispered in a voice barely audible, "They said you had a cruel heart, were wild and jealous like a demon, and did not even treat your own parents well. They said you beat them in public. They said later, if you had a son of your own, you would treat me and Rose even worse than animals, maybe even try to kill us to secure your son's inheritance. Is that true? Are you really that terrible?" I did not rush to deny it or defend myself, though my heart ached at her words. Instead, I asked gently, "Lily, who told you all of that? Was it your aunt and the nannies in this house spreading poison? Do you believe them?" She was silent for a long moment, struggling with herself, before answering quietly while looking at the floor. "Father once said that what you hear from others is often false, but what you see with your own eyes is true. You have to judge people by their actions, not by rumors." I asked carefully, touching her shoulder, "Then do you believe the words of others who have their own schemes, or do you believe what you have seen with your own eyes these past days?" Lily bowed her head and whispered, "I believe what I see." She looked up directly at me, her eyes still red and puffy, her voice soft but remarkably firm and clear. "Today, Aunt Diana told me to lead you here to the ancestral hall on purpose. She gave me this broken lantern and told me exactly what to say and do. She said if we drove you away and made you look bad in front of everyone, there would be no little brother born to take everything from us, and Rose and I would not be bullied anymore by a cruel stepmother. She promised Rose and I could finally be happy. But I have been watching you. I smiled gently at her and said softly, Lily, I will not bully you and Rose. You know that now, do you not? You have seen how I treat you. She reached out hesitantly and took my hand in her small one, squeezing it. Let us make lanterns together. I would like that. Okay. After Diana's elaborate plan failed so miserably and publicly, she guessed correctly that Lily had betrayed her and ruined everything. From then on, Diana completely tore off her mask of civility and no longer bothered pretending to be gentle or kind with me. The Cold War was over, replaced by open hostility. On the night of the Lantern Festival, when families gathered and lit their lanterns under the full moon, I made a beautiful moon-shaped lantern with Lily, taking great care with every fold and detail. Together we hung it carefully in the ancestral hall to honor her birth mother's memory, and I said a silent prayer for the woman who had left these children behind. When I returned to the courtyard, I saw Rose sitting alone under a tree, her eyes red and swollen from crying, holding a crushed rabbit lantern in her small hand. The lantern we had made together with such care and joy was completely destroyed. Rose, why are you crying? What happened to the lantern we made? Rose wiped her tears quickly with the back of her hand, bowed her head in shame, and mumbled softly, I was careless and stepped on it myself by accident. I am sorry, Mother. I frowned deeply, my anger rising. The child bowed her head to admit fault quickly, but the hurt on her face was impossible to hide or mistake. I asked gently but firmly if someone had bullied her. Rose stayed completely silent, only letting her tears fall quietly, refusing to speak. I turned sternly to the maid standing nearby, trying to make herself invisible, and demanded to know what actually happened here. Frightened by my cold look and sharp tone, the maid stammered nervously, her voice shaking, It was young Master Kevin, madam. He wanted the rabbit lantern for himself because it was prettier than his own. But Miss Rose refused to give it to him, so he got angry and stomped on the lantern hard until it was completely destroyed, and then he hit Miss Rose when she tried to stop him. Hearing this, I pulled Rose closer to me immediately to check her carefully for injuries. Sure enough, her knees were scraped badly and bleeding, her wrists were bruised, and there was a red mark on her cheek. I asked, He hit you and you did not hit back? Why did you just stand there and let him hurt you? Rose lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper of shame. I did not dare. I was afraid. The child was naturally timid and gentle. Being bullied, she dared not even cry out loud for help, let alone fight back against someone who had always terrorized her. I was silent for a long moment, my mind working, then I dragged Rose into the room and took a wooden ruler out of the chest. The kind teachers used to discipline students. I said firmly, Rose, come here and stand firm in front of me. Rose walked trembling towards me, her small hands clenched tight at her sides, tears falling like rain down her cheeks. Mother, I am so sorry. I was wrong. Please do not hit me. I asked where exactly she was wrong, what her crime was. She said she did not know, her voice breaking. I said if she did not even know where she was wrong, what was she apologizing for? Why was she so quick to accept blame for everything? I half knelt down to her level, pushed the ruler firmly into Rose's trembling hand, closing her fingers around it, then held out my own hand palm up, ordering her to hit me as hard as she could. Rose was absolutely terrified, her eyes going wide, and she quickly shook her head frantically, saying she dared not, she could never. I commanded in a voice that left no room for argument, I am telling you to hit me. Pretend I am the one who bullied you, who destroyed something you loved, who hurt you. Use all your strength to hit me. Hurry up, or do you not even have any backbone left in you? Under my intense pressure and fierce gaze, Rose screamed in complete despair, squeezing her eyes shut, and swung the ruler down hard onto my outstretched hand. Smack. The sound echoed in the room. The child stared in absolute shock at the ruler in her hand, at the red mark blooming on my skin, her face pale white as a sheet. She looked up at me as if she had just woken from a terrible nightmare, unable to believe what she had done. But I just smiled with deep satisfaction and pride. Very good, Rose. I could protect Rose every day with my own body, and I could go deal with Kevin myself and teach him a lesson he would never forget, but doing so would only protect her temporarily, only while I was there. If I were not here in the future, who would help her? Who would fight for her? I wanted Rose to learn how to fight back, to learn to stand up and protect herself. To a child, parents are the biggest sky above them, the ultimate authority. If she dared to break through that sky, to strike even her own mother when ordered, then there would be nothing left in the entire world to fear. Well done, Rose. From now on, if anyone bullies you, fight back just like this. With all your strength. With Mother here, you do not have to be afraid of anything or anyone ever again. Rose burst into loud, gasping tears, threw herself into my arms, and cried for a very long time, releasing years of fear and pain, before finally letting go of the ruler with shaking hands and resting her head on my chest, exhausted. I had thought that with Rose's shy and weak nature, with how deeply the fear had been beaten into her, it would take a very long time for her to change and find her courage. Unexpectedly, the child was so much stronger than I had ever imagined. The very next day, she beat Kevin black and blue, and the entire household heard about it. At that time, I was busy in the main hall demanding firmly that Diana and Old Lady Chen hand over the account books and the keys to the treasury immediately. Since the very day I married and entered this house, they had never let me see the treasury, making convenient excuses every single time I asked to review the finances as was my right. Before, I had planned to work slowly and carefully, gathering evidence. But now that the mask was completely torn and we were open enemies, I saw absolutely no need to be polite or patient anymore. However, thick-skinned as they were, they only knew how to dodge and avoid, making excuses, refusing stubbornly to hand over the keys and let me see the truth. Just as we were in a tense standoff, with me blocking the door and them trying to leave, a servant came running in shouting frantically that it was a complete disaster. Young Master Kevin was fighting with Miss Rose in the courtyard. My heart jumped in fear and I rushed over immediately, my robes flying. Diana followed casually behind me, taking her time, as she always confidently assumed her precious son never lost a fight to anyone. However, when we arrived at the scene, Diana froze in absolute horror, her hand flying to her mouth. Kevin's face was swollen badly on both sides, his nose was bleeding profusely into his mouth, and he was crying so hard he could barely breathe, could not speak clearly through his sobs and blood. He had been thoroughly and completely beaten. Rose, on the other hand, only had slightly messy hair but was otherwise completely fine, standing there breathing hard but victorious. Oh heavens, my son, my precious son, how were you beaten like this? Who did this? Diana rushed over frantically to hug Kevin, checking him all over for injuries, crying and then pointing a shaking finger at Rose to scold her furiously. You little brat, you little demon, have you gone completely mad today? How dare you hit your cousin like this? How dare you raise your hand to him? Rose and Kevin were similar in age, only a year apart, but girls grow faster at that age. Unexpectedly, in a real fight where she finally fought back with everything she had, she did not lose at all. In fact, she had won decisively. I breathed a deep sigh of relief, feeling so proud I could burst, and pulled Rose over to my side protectively, wiping the dirt off her face gently with my sleeve. I looked at Kevin and said mockingly, "How pathetic and embarrassing. A boy beaten badly by a girl, and you still dare to cry about it." Diana screamed at me, her face twisted with rage. "Ruby Song, how are you raising your child? What kind of mother teaches a girl to be violent? Kevin is the only son of the Chen family, the only boy. If something serious happens to him, if he is permanently injured, can you pay for it with your life?" I stood up tall, pulling myself to my full height, my voice full of mockery and steel. So what if he is the only son? Does that give him the right to hurt others? Our daughter is also flesh and blood, born of a mother and raised by a father. Her life has value too. I continued, my voice rising. Let me tell you something clearly right now, Diana. If your son dares to bully my daughter again, if he touches her even once more, I will castrate him myself with a knife and turn young Master Kevin into young Lady Kevin. Then you can have a daughter instead. Diana trembled violently, her whole body shaking, and asked in a horrified whisper if I dared, if I would really do such a thing. I replied, my eyes cold as ice, try me. Test me and find out. If you cannot teach your son properly, if you cannot control him, just wait and see what happens. At worst, I will go to prison for it, and we will see who suffers more. We will see if I suffer more sitting in a cell, or if your son suffers more becoming a eunuch for the rest of his life, never able to give you grandchildren. But remember this clearly, Diana. Although my family is not high nobility, I am still the daughter of an official with connections. My grandfather came from the river transport business and knows everyone on the waterways. My uncle is a convoy leader in Danjo who commands rough men. Once I am in prison, people from the underworld will surely come to find you demanding justice for me, calling in favors. Whether you can keep your lives then, whether you can sleep safely at night, is your problem to worry about, not mine. You are a vicious woman. You are a demon. Diana trembled as she hugged Kevin protectively, finally truly understanding deep in her bones that my reputation as a female demon was not an exaggerated rumor or mere gossip. While the two sides were arguing loudly, voices rising, the old lady was shaking with rage in her seat and finally shouted, "You are too bold, girl. You go too far." I did not bother saving face anymore or pretending respect. I slammed my hand down hard on the table, making the teacups jump. You are the bold one, old woman. As an elder, you openly favor Richard and Diana, letting them act like parasites on my husband, sucking him dry, while treating his daughters worse than servants. Do you think I know nothing? Do you think I am blind? The Chin family spends money like water, like you have endless wealth. How could the tiny salary of a minor official like Richard possibly be enough to support this lifestyle? If not for my husband's generosity, if not for David's money, you would not be living so comfortably now in this big house with servants. So why are you putting on airs with me here, acting like some great matriarch? Ruby, you are talking complete nonsense and slander. The money from the second master was all spent properly on raising Lily and Rose, on their food and education and clothing. We have spent everything on them. I shot back immediately, if that is true, if you are so honest, why do you not dare let me see the account books? Why do you hide the keys from me? At the mere mention of money and accounts, Diana and the old lady immediately became awkward and uncomfortable, exchanging guilty looks. Fine, I said loudly. Since there is no trust left between us, since this family is broken, we might as well split everything. Everyone keeps what is theirs, and no one needs to depend on anyone else or pretend anymore. Taking advantage of the chaos and their moment of shock, I suddenly lunged forward and snatched the keys hanging from Diana's waist, then rushed straight toward the treasury before anyone could stop me. Diana and the old lady were terrified and tried desperately to stop me, grabbing at my clothes, but it was too late. I was younger and faster. I unlocked the heavy door and pushed it open. The treasury was cold and empty, almost completely bare. Just a few broken pieces of furniture and empty chests. The substantial wealth David had built over the years through blood and battle, all the rewards and salary, had been spent completely and utterly by them on themselves. Very good, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You even spent the dowry meant for the two children, for their future marriages. You are truly shameless beyond words, beyond comprehension. Did you not just say it was all used to raise Lily and Rose? Let us see if you can tell me a single truth. Show me in the accounts where all this money went to the children. I lunged to grab the account books from where Diana was hiding them. Diana went absolutely wild, screaming, and quickly called all the servants to stop me, to hold me back. The entire room descended into complete chaos with everyone fighting and pulling, furniture overturning. Lily and Rose were squeezed into a corner crying in fear, holding each other. Just then, a loud voice from outside announced urgently, "Not good. Not good. The second master has returned. The general is here." Before the words were even finished, the announcer was dragged inside by soldiers. Everyone immediately stopped fighting as if frozen, hands still raised, and turned to the door in shock and horror, only to see David, dressed in full armor that caught the light, walking in with a cold expression that made the temperature drop. His heavy boots echoed on the floor. "What is everyone doing here? Why is my house in chaos?" "Father. Daddy." Lily and Rose immediately broke free and rushed into David's arms, nearly knocking him over. David held the two children close, one in each arm, looking up with cold eyes directed at all of us. He was tall and imposing, his face hard as stone, carrying a serious killing presence from years of war, his eyes sharp like a wolf's, making people instinctively shake and step back. For a moment, I forgot this was supposed to be my husband. My hand still held a wooden stick I had grabbed during the fight, and I did not know what to do next, how to explain this scene. In contrast, Diana and the old lady reacted very quickly, their survival instincts sharp. "David, thank the heavens you are finally back. We have been suffering so much. This wicked woman wants to kill us. We treated her so well, welcomed her, tried to teach her, but she is never satisfied, always wanting more. She is bullying us because we are soft-hearted and old. She beat Kevin until he could not stand, and now she wants to steal all the family property. We are truly being bullied to death by her. She is a demon." The two of them cried dramatically and accused me, talking complete nonsense without a single trace of shame, their words flowing like water. David pondered in silence for a long moment, his gaze stopping on me, his emotions completely hard to read behind that stern face. "Madam, is what my sister-in-law and grandmother said true? Did you do these things?" I threw the wooden stick to the ground where it clattered, planning to explain everything, to tell him the whole truth, but Rose was already sobbing loudly, her voice rising. "They are lying. They are liars. Mother did not bully them. They are the ones who bullied Mother. They have been stealing from you. They hurt us." David was visibly stunned, his eyes widening slightly. Perhaps he did not expect Rose to call me mother, to defend me. For a moment, his expression showed clear surprise, and then he turned to look at his eldest daughter. "Lily, you speak. Tell me the truth." Lily turned to look at me for a long moment, biting her lip, then turned back to her father and replied calmly and clearly, "Father, Mother never bullied grandmother or Aunt Diana even once. On the contrary, Aunt Diana has tried to trap Mother many times, has schemed against her. Even during the Lantern Festival, Aunt Diana taught me to frame Mother, gave me exact words to say, telling me to say in front of all the guests that Mother mistreated me and was cruel, but I did not do it in the end because Mother is a very good person and I did not want to harm her. She has only been kind to us." Diana panicked, her face going white, and screamed desperately, "Lily, are you insane? Have you lost your mind? What nonsense are you talking about? David, I never did such terrible things. It must be Ruby who forced Lily to say this, who threatened her. You know I would never." David coldly interrupted her rambling, his voice cutting like a knife. "Right and wrong, I have understood clearly enough." His gaze shifted to me, and in that look, a trace of complexity appeared, something almost like respect. "Today you broke into the treasury. For what reason? Tell me." I was used to facing everything alone in my life, fighting my own battles, so now being defended so strongly by two children felt strange and unfamiliar, and my momentum weakened slightly, my anger draining away. "I wanted to see the account books. They have been stealing from you for years. They embezzled your assets and salary, and they even spent the dowry you left specifically for the two children, for Lily and Rose's future." Diana stammered, her hands shaking, "Do not slander us. Do not believe her lies. David, do you not believe me and grandmother? We raised your children." "Sister-in-law, you should be very careful with your words right now," David said quietly. "She is my wife, properly married. There are no outsiders here in this room." David turned and signaled his subordinates with his eyes, a small gesture. They received the order instantly and immediately rushed into the treasury to search. Seeing this, the old lady rolled her eyes back dramatically and pretended to faint, falling onto the chair, while Diana screamed, "Do not look at the books. Stop them. Grandmother has fainted. We need a doctor." David walked over calmly, crouched down beside the old lady, observed her for a moment with an experienced eye, and then used his thumb to press down hard on the pressure point right above her lip. The old lady, who had been faking unconsciousness, was in so much sudden pain that her eyes flew open and she yelled out, "Stop pressing. Stop it. It hurts." After his men checked and reviewed the account books meticulously all afternoon, going through years of records, Diana and the old lady finally ran completely out of energy and excuses. They sat slumped in their chairs. Over the years, all of David's substantial salary and imperial rewards had indeed been wasted by them on their own lifestyle. Meanwhile, the amount actually spent on Lily and Rose was almost nothing, barely enough for basic food. David's face grew heavier and darker the more he looked at the numbers, while Diana and the old lady lowered their heads, not daring to look up or meet his eyes. At dusk, when the sky was turning orange, Richard returned from the government office. As soon as he walked into the tense room, he sensed something was terribly wrong and quickly pointed at Diana, turning on her, and scolded, "David, brother, it is all her fault. All of it. I will go back and scold her properly and beat her if needed. Brother, please do not be angry. Do not let this ruin our brotherhood. We are still family." "Does Big Brother still remember we are brothers?" David asked quietly. "That we share blood?" David said, his voice carefully controlled. "All these years, by the Emperor's direct order, I guarded the border and could not raise my children myself, could not be here. I repeatedly asked you, begged you, to trust my daughters to your care. Yet how have you treated them? How have you repaid that trust?" Richard felt deeply ashamed, quietly turning his face away, not daring to speak or defend himself. David looked coldly around at all of them, his jaw tight, holding back the anger burning in his heart. "From today on, we will split the family completely. The money you greedily took over the years, consider it my final act of filial respect to grandmother. From now on, everyone lives their own separate life, completely unrelated to each other." Although Diana and the old lady cried bitter tears and expressed deep regret, begging for another chance, the family was eventually divided that very night. David ordered his subordinates to immediately build a wall, splitting the house into two distinct parts. While the men worked through the night, carrying bricks and mixing mortar, David and I sat in a room facing each other in awkward silence, not knowing what to say or where to begin. Although we were husband and wife on paper, this was the first time we truly met face to face, really looked at each other, and it felt strange and deeply awkward. After the children washed their feet and got ready for bed, Lily and Rose ran into the room to play and show their father things, breaking the tension. They showed David the scented pouches they had embroidered with their own small hands over many hours. "The embroidery is beautiful, so much better than 2 years ago," David praised warmly, examining them closely. "Mother taught us every stitch. Mother also taught us how to write properly, how to hold the brush," Rose said proudly, running to get her practice book to show David, the characters wobbly but improving. The room became lively and warm for a while until the two children grew tired and were carried away gently by the maids to their beds. David held the scented pouch carefully and turned to look at me directly. "Thank you sincerely. You have taught the two children very well. Better than I ever hoped," I replied, looking down at my hands. "No need to thank me. Was this not all part of your plan from the beginning?" David stiffened slightly, his shoulders tensing. I took an unfinished handkerchief from the sewing basket, turning it over and over in my hands nervously, and said, "At first, I genuinely thought you married me because you had no other choice, because no one else would have you. Only later did I overhear from Diana that you insisted specifically on marrying me, that you asked for me by name." I continued, finally looking up. "This is very strange when you think about it. I have a terrible reputation and decent people avoid me like plague. Why did you insist on marrying me? Unless you had met me before somewhere, understood me somehow, knew that my eyes cannot tolerate injustice, and were absolutely certain I would treat your daughters well and fight for them." The air was silent for several long seconds before David laughed softly, a warm sound. "Indeed, nothing escapes my clever wife's eyes." He sighed deeply and said gently, his voice full of memory, actually, I met you a long time ago, years before this marriage was even discussed. Many years ago, when I returned to the capital for official duty, I saw you fighting with your stepmother, Madame Chu, in the street. You won decisively and then happily went to eat a bowl of noodles by the roadside, completely unbothered. That day, everyone passing by said you were rude and unwomanly, but I saw something different. I saw you wiping away tears while you ate, thinking no one was watching. On your way home, you even took off your outer coat and gave it to a shivering beggar child huddled in a doorway. I knew then you were definitely not what people said about you. The rumors were lies. He paused, collecting his thoughts. In recent years, Lily and Rose grew up and spoke less and less. They became silent and withdrawn. I began to realize they were not living well here, but there were some things I could not easily do from so far away. So I thought of you. You are famous for being a fierce woman who takes no nonsense. If something really happened with my sister-in-law and the old lady, if they truly were abusing my daughters, you would surely not spare them or stay silent. Making a big scene would give me the justification I needed to smoothly cut ties with them completely. He stopped, a hint of guilt flashing in his eyes. Yes, I am sorry for using you like this. The lamp flickered and the light in the room dimmed. I curled my lips in a faint smile. It is nothing that requires apology. I do not mind being used if the cause is just. Marriage is originally a calculated deal between two parties anyway. Each has their own purpose and needs. If I were truly looking for sincere affection and romance, I would not have agreed to marry you in the first place. I added, setting down my sewing, husband, you need not say anything more or apologize further. From now on, we will live normally as housemates. I will teach the children well and not interfere in your affairs or your life. Naturally, in return, you must not interfere with mine. My life only asks for 2 words, freedom. Growing flowers, raising birds, walking the streets, listening to music, doing as I please. I will not wash dishes or cook for you, nor will I serve you as a traditional wife. You can go visit pleasure houses or find lovers or concubines if you want. I do not care at all. As long as you do not bring it in front of me or shame the children. Can you agree to that arrangement? He looked at me for a very long time, studying my face, then laughed, his voice dry. Has my wife finished speaking? Is that everything? I have finished. Good. He was silent for a moment, seeming to make a decision, then took a leather pouch from inside his chest armor. Take this. Keep it safe. Upon returning to the capital this time, the emperor granted me gold, silver, and land as rewards for my service, an amount equal to 10 full years of my regular salary. From now on, it is all handed over to you for safekeeping and use. Everything you just said, all your conditions, I will agree to completely. Furthermore, I will not visit pleasure houses or find lovers or take concubines. You can rest assured on that. I thought to myself, how can a man's word ever be trusted? However, his willingness to be so open with me could be considered honest. I took the heavy keys and said simply, good. David smiled at me for a long time, his eyes warm, then clasped his hands together and bowed formally. From now on, I rely entirely on you, wife. After the wall was built and the house officially divided, I went to sleep with the 2 children in their room, leaving David completely alone in his chamber. I liked this relationship honestly. Using each other without any messy emotional entanglement saved so much trouble and pain. After the separation, Diana caused quite a fuss for weeks, making scenes. They were used to spending lavishly on expensive things, and now losing access to David's generous salary, their lives became extremely tight and naturally very difficult. Fortunately, David had brought back many subordinates and soldiers, so no matter how much Diana screamed and threatened, it was just empty noise that no one heeded. 10 days later, the emperor issued an order that David would serve as the governor-general of Diwan, a distant but important post. David and I discussed it thoroughly and decided to take the children with us to his new assignment. Although the capital was beautiful and full of culture, Diana and the others visiting every few days, making demands, complaining, annoyed me greatly. It was better to leave for peace and quiet. On the long road to the new post, traveling for weeks, I sat in the comfortable carriage teaching the children how to read difficult characters and do sums, while David rode his horse alongside, sometimes coming to the window to check on us. As time passed gradually, the soldiers in the army began chatting with me during rest stops, telling stories about their General David. Only then did I learn that in their eyes, he was a strict, upright man who always kept to proper conduct and never visited brothels like other officers. A young soldier sighed wistfully one evening by the fire. The general is devoted entirely to the country and missed the proper time for marriage for years, turning down matches. We all thought he would stay single forever, married to his duty. Fortunately, he met you, madam. You changed everything. They did not know David and I were just using each other, that ours was a business arrangement. I smiled lightly and said, with or without me, your general would be exactly the same person. Who says so? I have noticed that since the general met you, madam, the corners of his mouth have never stopped smiling. He laughs now. He was always so serious before, like stone. Is that so? I opened the curtain curiously to look into the distance at him. David was riding his horse with easy grace, laughing heartily and teasing a few young soldiers about something, ruffling their hair. He had married early and now at only 32, standing among the young men, he looked like a big brother figure, strong and protective. Perhaps sensing my gaze on him, he suddenly turned around and our eyes met. I was startled by the intensity and quickly pulled back, placing my hand on my chest to calm my suddenly pounding heart. I felt ashamed of myself and my reaction, but honestly, David's body was indeed extremely fit from years of training. I wondered briefly what it would look like without clothes, then shook my head at my own thoughts. The carriage traveled for several long months through mountains and plains, and finally arrived in Diwan in early spring. I used David's money to buy a deserted former prince's estate that had good bones, cleaned it up thoroughly with many workers, and the whole family moved into the spacious compound. Lily and Rose each had their own room for the first time in their lives, decorated as they wished, but they were so close they mostly stayed in the same room anyway, only sleeping separately occasionally. Sometimes I slept alone in my large bed. Sometimes I slept with them, telling stories until they drifted off. As for David, he and I were rarely together in private, only going to his study room for a brief moment when there was something to discuss about household matters or the children. After discussing business, we would not know what to do or say, so I would give a dry laugh and return to my own room. This went on for months. One night when it was very late, the household asleep, I sat alone in my room for a long time. I did not know why exactly, but I felt the room was very empty despite all the fine furniture. Just then, a soft knock sounded at the door, unusual at this hour. I opened it cautiously to look. David stood outside in the dim hallway, and I gasped. He was carrying a large bundle of sharp thorns on his completely bare back, kneeling on one knee in the formal posture, his expression absolutely serious. He wore only his thin undergarments, his collar slightly open, revealing the faint outline of his well-developed muscles and old battle scars. I stared, slightly dazed by the sight, and quickly adjusted my breathing, pretending not to care or be affected. What are you doing here like this? I am following the ancient story of carrying thorns to ask for forgiveness from the one you have wronged. Wife, I was wrong. I sincerely apologize. I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, where exactly were you wrong? I was wrong to calculate against you and use you like a piece on a game board. I was wrong to not tell you the full truth from the beginning. I replied, confused, was this not our original agreement? Just mutual use and benefit. Why apologize now? Because I like you, he said simply. He took a deep breath and looked directly at me, his eyes burning intensely like strong wine that could make you drunk. I want to truly become husband and wife with you, in every sense. I do not want to continue living coldly like this, seeing you every day but not daring to approach you or touch you. I do not want to be a stranger under the same roof with you anymore. I want you to see my heart, to know what I feel. My mind went completely blank for a moment. I looked at him kneeling there, at his eyes full of raw emotion, at his body, and I was certain my own heart felt the same as his, had been feeling this way for a while. I leaned down and grabbed his collar firmly. Then why do not you come inside already? The moonlight was like water, flooding through the windows. We were like two fish swimming in it, playing freely, discovering each other. Later, we never left Diwan. David and I had a son and a daughter of our own, living a peaceful and free life far from the capital. Lily and Rose stayed at home until they were over 20 before choosing their own husbands carefully and marrying men they truly liked and respected. Even though they were married, the house always kept their childhood rooms exactly the same, and the furniture inside stayed unchanged. People often say a daughter has no home. Once married, she is an outsider in her husband's house and merely a guest in her mother's house. But I wanted them to know deeply they still had a home here, and they would forever be the masters of this house. Ruby's journey teaches us that true virtue is not about keeping a gentle image but having the courage to protect the vulnerable. She used her wicked reputation as armor to nurture two neglected girls, proving that a mother's love is defined by action, not blood. Ultimately, her fierce independence did not push love away. It attracted the only man strong enough to match her. It reminds us that when we bravely stand up for others, we often find our own sanctuary. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Lotus Tale Studios to help more stories come to life. See you in the next story.